Welcome back. In this episode we're finishing the calibration of the Axminster AT260SPT. That's a spiral planer thicknesser from Axminster. If that sounds good, stick around. Welcome to the Woodgrafter. I'm Andy Guile. Our mission here is to inspire, educate and support you in your journey to becoming a better woodworker. We have a whole variety of videos from tool setups, techniques, how to use tools safely, videos such as this one, and step-by-step project builds taking you every single way through the creation of something of beauty and value. So if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing now, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment and just get involved in what we do. Let's get going. I now want to make sure that the in-feed table is coplanar with the out-feed table. And that's in terms of left to right, but it's also terms of front to back. So even if we adjusted this one and it was slightly at an angle to the blade, as long as we allow for that on the in-feed table, that's okay because we're passing the wood across the cutter block. So these two have got to be coplanar at the front and the back, so there's no twist in these two panels. And as long as that's parallel with the blade, we are in good shape. And the technique is exactly the same. It's still a pain in the arse, but the technique is the same. So the first job, we've got to raise this up to a 0 cut. So at the front of the machine, there's this small yellow scale. And it says 0 on there. Now that's how much cut you're going to take. So at the moment that's just under 1mm, about 0.9 millimeters. That's how much lower this table is to this table. So I want to raise this to 0 so it's the same level as this table. Undo the handle, and then down the back here there's the same adjusting knob that we're using on that side. Now what you'll find is you won't be able to adjust this to 0 out of the box. That's because you've got a locking nut on here that's going to prevent that movement. It's factory set for somewhere around about 0.5 millimeters, your minimum cut. So undo the little Allen key and back off the locking nut on the side, and now you can adjust this until that indicator here reads 0, which is there. And then just lock off this again to make sure nothing moves on you. Now just take your piece of wood again and just check that you're not touching those blades. There should be 0 cut now on that wood. So if this set to 0 and your wood clearing the blades, we can now look at setting up this table. Come in with a trusted straight edge, and what you're looking for is any rock inside that straight edge. You can see that? So I've got a slight gap at the back of this table, and on this side I have less of a gap, but I still have a gap. So the back of this is low in relationship to this table. So I want to just raise initially the back of this table. Wind this up so it's out of the way a little bit. That'll just make your life touch easier. And now you can open this table here. And surprise, surprise, we have the same arrangement here. Now I'm going to leave this one in place for the time being, and I'm going to raise this one, and that will just raise up the back of this table. So I'm going to undo the locking nut and anti-clockwise to raise. That was quite a lot. We'll see what that does for us. Lock it down, bring your table back down and lock it into position. Now come back in with your straight edge and see if you've made a difference. And look at that. Straight away, that is looking pretty good. Now I know I've gone too far, and I know that because when this is flat on this table here, and this is at the end here, I can see a slither of daylight underneath this. Not a lot, but a little. So I've gone too high on the back table. Just want to check the front edge to see how we're doing there. Yeah, and that's a similar problem, but more so. So, I now lower this down. back edge of our table is now co-planar with the back edge of the outfeed table, and we know the outfeed table is parallel to the blade. So now we can check the front. Now the front is down on this side, so now we want to work on this knob. The front's down, so I need to raise this. Now the challenge that you now have, of course, is every time that you raise this, it's going to alter the back as well. But we'll just work on the front one there for the time being and just get that somewhere near, and then we can fine tune. And I've got no light showing. And I've got no rock. Now we can try the back. Whoa, I've got no light showing and no rock. So we've done it, so the infeed table is now coplanar to the outfeed table, and we know that the outfeed table is parallel and level to the blade. I just want to lock these down to make sure they're not going to move in operation. Lock those bottom nuts down. And while I'm here, just make sure that the locking mechanism itself is locked down as well. And then I'll just do a final check on that. And we are good. So remember this knob here at the back that adjusts the height. I'm just going to take that back away now from 0, and I'm going to set my minimum cut to probably about 0.2-ish millimeters. That just feels nice. And now I can lock down this again and lock that off. My next job is my fence. Now this isn't important, but the first thing I want to do is to make my fence parallel to the edge of my table, and that has no bearing whatsoever on the quality of the cut. I just don't like things that aren't straight. So I'm going to come up to the front edge and I'm going to lock the fence in a bit more. Can you see this gap here much wider, narrowing down to where to that end? So I just want to make this parallel to this front edge. Now remember when we fitted the fence in an earlier episode and we put this mounting plate on the back, there's some adjustment in this, and that's what's going to adjust how parallel our fence is. So we're going to come back in with the Allen key and just loosen off the 2 mounting bolts and 1 there, and that's just going to give me enough movement now on that fence. So I'm just going to swing this round until I get something that is parallel to that front edge. So it's not critical, it just annoys me. Probably says more about me than the machine. So I'm not sure if you can see, I've got a wider gap here than I have here. So this fence is actually leaning in this direction. So what I now want to do is just to level this fence up. That's no harder than undoing the clamps at the back, the ones that put the fence into position, pushing down on here so it's all nice, and tightening up again. So now my fence is now parallel to the front edge and it's level to the table. The final thing is I want to make the fence 90 degrees to the table, and that's no harder than with a square. And as you can see, I've got a nice gap here at the front, so the fence isn't square. And it shouldn't be square consistently throughout its length, because everything else we know is good. So to adjust this, we come into this angle piece, and we've got one of these levers here, if you remember. And I want to just move that forward. Now at this point you might find you can't tip the fence enough forward, and that's because we've got this back edge here resting on the table. So also just loosen those off a little bit, and then that's going to allow you to get more adjustment in that fence, and adjust that until it's looking square, and then lock it down. And then just come back in and lock the back fence down. Now a lot of people miss this, but here on the back there's a small screw. There's an Allen key inside it and it's got a locking nut on it. What you now want to do, with everything locked down tightly and your fence in the 90-degree position, is to set that. And if you set this, then every time you take the fence off and readjust the fence for 90 degrees, it will always come back bang on. Now sadly, the Allen key size is different than both of those supplied inside the kit. So there's nothing in the Axminster kit that's the right size for that bolt, which is a bit of a shame. It's a 3mm hex. So release the locking nut. I like to back this off and then take it forward until I know it's sitting tight against my stop, and then tighten down the locking nut again, and then just come back in again to make sure nothing's moved on your fence, and we're looking really good. So we know that our outfeed table is level and parallel to the blade. We know that the infeed table is coplanar to the outfeed table, therefore level and parallel to the blade, and we know that our fence is 90 degree to the table. Now on the back of the bracket here, you've then got this yellow calibration gauge, and this shows you the angle of the fence. So obviously this is now set onto 0. Now because you've adjusted this, chances are this is reading incorrectly. There's a small screw here and a small plastic indicator of a red line on it that shows a position. To be honest with you, I would never use this. I wouldn't trust that enough because of parallax error. And unless I'm really over the machine looking down like this to get the red line on there, it's always going to be inaccurate. So I'm always going to use a measuring device to make sure this is at the angle that I want it to be. However, if you did want to use this, there's a screw here. Undo that screw, this little plastic piece will slide backwards and forwards, and you can put your red line over 0. Say as a quick cursory glance, it's over 0, and that's good enough for me. I now want to set this fence at 45, so I can release this off here and set this all the way down to 45 and lock it down. And coming in with this angle finder here, you can see that I am out by 0.5 of a degree. Now I'm not going to worry about that too much, say, because I'll use the angle finder anyway, and if I wanted this to be 45, I would set it on here. If you are using that calibration table at the back, what you would do is find a perfect 45 degree on here. You would lock this into position with your red line on 45, and behind the fence you've got a similar arrangement. There's another one of those nuts with a locking nut on it and the Allen key, and you would take the fence off and then you would adjust that one, and that would give you the perfect 45. To me, I'm not really bothered about that, because I say I'll use my angle finder to set the fence where I want it to be, and I'm not going to rely on the scale on the back anyway. But you can do that. Set this to 45 degrees, lock it into position, take the fence off, adjust the locking nut, and then it will always be quick and easy to get back to that 45 degree position. But what I am interested in is, does that bring me back exactly to my 90 degrees reference point? And the answer to that question is no, it doesn't. So what I'm going to be doing is, every time I adjust this fence, I'm going to be using my measuring gear to make sure I've got a known angle, and I'm not going to be relying on this bracket at the back, because as you probably know by now, I love precision in my work, and the more precise that you can be in prepping your joinery, the better quality joints you're going to have. And I'm not happy with that amount of variance. So that's it, our planer jointer is now unboxed, it's set up, and now it's calibrated for use. So I'm 100% confident that every piece of material I put through this is going to come out perfectly sized, perfectly square, and ready for joinery, and that's what it's about, and it's well worth taking the time to calibrate and set this thing up. Now don't misunderstand me, you're going to get good results out of the box, and I just had a play before I calibrated it, and I did manage to get square consistent sizes of material. So we are talking about fine tuning, but I think that's important. To me, it's important to do the fine tuning so I know that everything is going to come out bang on and consistent. That's it for today. In the next episode, we're going to put it through its paces. We'll look at safe use techniques, and then the overall technique of taking rough stock and milling it down. But before I go, the last thing I'm going to do today, I'm just going to take some wax. This is not special machine wax in any way, shape or form. It's just wax I would use on the final finish on furniture. And I'm going to lightly wax the cast iron surfaces. That's the two top tables and the inside table with this. That reduces the friction when we're using it on the wood, and more importantly, it protects it from rusting inside the workshop. See you next time.